Next session is, I'm not sure if it's the two oldest men in the room talking about gaming, but ladies and gentlemen, we have a very, very special friend, David Porter. He is responsible for one of the, if not the largest media budget in the world. And Unilever have been doing a lot recently in the gaming industry, so he's agreed to talk to us today about getting one of the biggest brands, biggest companies into gaming. So, David, please be seated.
Hello, pioneers, post-COVID pioneers. Nice to see people in the room.
Now, also, you'll know that we've been asking everyone the question, what was your first game? Now, David actually inspired that because we did an event with David a year ago, and that was his first question. So, David, question to you. What was your first game?
I didn't get to tell him. So I think like anyone of my age, I'm a pre-console person. So we all played Pong, but I don't really count that as a game. So for me, I'd have to take you back to mid-late 70s, teenage porter, working in bars in South London, getting paid £5 a session in a bag of 10p coins, serving afters to some very interesting characters who stayed on after the pub had shut. And in between rounds, I would play three arcade games: Space Invaders, Breakout, and my favorite, which was Asteroids.
Asteroids.
And in those days, you could, if you could crack the algorithm, you could just play all night. So I completely wasted my youth. I had to go back to school when I was 40 to get my qualifications because I spent it all gaming. So my poor teenage son has some quite strict rules when it comes to how much gaming he does. But that's my story.
So what was
I brought it along.
What was the last game you played?
Oh, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And this is the Space Invaders cassette that went into the Atari that we had at home. And this is what kills me. Back in those days, because these games were so hard to understand, you got a booklet of instructions to play Space Invaders. Can you believe it?
Where's the QR code?
Exactly. And our kids just turn on a new device and get straight into it, right?
Okay, so let's jump forward 40 years.
Thank you for that.
How has the role of gaming changed, do you see, for people during the pandemic?
So the reason I was really keen to talk about this was I want to jump back another 20, having conned you into that, and I want to go to my first home visits in China in the early 2000s, where we were seeing the children of the Cultural Revolution, who grew up with virtually nothing, grown up and having their children under the one-child policy. So suddenly you had these lone children with emerging middle-class parents who would do everything for them. All the ones I went to see had PCs in the kids' room. They were all online. They were living online. They were socializing online. They were learning online. They were traveling online. And if any of you are parents of teenagers today, I bet that sounds quite familiar, right? To the experience that our kids are having now. And what it did there was it transformed the Chinese youth into an incredibly immersed digital native population like we had not seen anywhere else on the planet. And now it's happened all over the planet with gaming at its core. And I'm not saying whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a thing. And so how we communicate with those people as they grow up will change. And by the way, the Chinese kids I'm talking about are now running our businesses because they're well into their 30s. So I think that's one of the things that's changed how we use media and communications, that kind of immersion.
There's been a lot of conversation the last couple of days about the metaverse, about brands getting involved in gaming, and so many different facets of gaming, whether it's casual gaming, mobile gaming, console gaming. But what do you see as the biggest opportunity for brands?
And by the way, I apologize, I've got notes in my hand, but that's because I've spent 2 years talking to people on a screen with a wall of Post-it notes behind me, totally prepared, sounding like I know what I'm doing. But
and now you're wearing trousers and socks?
Yeah, that's the first time I'm on long shirt and long trousers together for quite a while. But so I apologize for that, but I wanted to say the right things as well. I think one of the most exciting things we've got going on is how we can engage with people in a different way, because gaming works differently from other people. You will hear people my age who are passionate about it. And so it cuts across age and geography and some of the social nuances across borders, and even cuts through things like accessibility. Everyone can play, everyone can connect. So it just gives us a different space. I think that's going to be really useful to help us tell great brand stories, because there's the agency world. If you're in it, you'll know this well. We're struggling, I think, as an industry to find great ways to tell true brand stories with emotion and depth in a world where people click skip after 4 seconds. So maybe, just maybe, this will bring back a new opportunity to do something like that.
Now we will be asking some questions, so if you have any questions for David, please do get them ready. Into Unilever now, how and when did Unilever first get involved with gaming?
It's quite a hard thing to find out. I remember the first conversation I had about gaming was as a media opportunity was back in early 90s, I think, in the UK, where I had the Red Bull account and someone wanted us to provide power-ups for all the platform games. And that was one that really slipped through my fingers, I think, looking back. I think the first one I can trace in Unilever at the moment, and we've been playing at gaming for a long time, but the first one I can find is in India in 2008, where we set up a gaming league for Paddle Pop, one of our ice lolly brands, where we had 35,000 kids join the league, which sounded amazing at the time, great case study, huge numbers. But if you think about the scale now of some of the live events, it was just a drop in the ocean. So what we're trying to do now is bring a lot more scale. Gaming is getting a lot of attention inside our business and a lot more energy around it. And through the work I do with the Mobile Marketing Association and with the World Federation of Advertisers, I know that's true right across the piece. It's really, really exciting marketers at the moment.
I remember we had a conversation with your colleagues in India recently about gaming in India, and it's fascinating that they're not willing to admit it, but gaming is now bigger than cricket in India. But it was interesting to plant that seed in their head. They were very, very defensive about it. So that was a long time ago in India. But yeah. Can you share what is Unilever doing now to get into gaming, or to get ready to get into gaming? Or you have done some stuff in gaming already, right?
Oh yeah. We're busy. Unfortunately, the really cool stuff I can't tell you about yet because it's super secret and it's in the pipeline, and because it's been a big year in that respect. But we've built a thing called Uplay. That's letter U, play, of course, being Unilever, which is just a framework where we build all the capabilities and we get all the energy going in the business. And a lot of it is really experiential. Personally, this was my mantra when we first started, evangelizing around digital in the media team years ago. Was in all these things, in all things digital, in all the new platforms, you've got to experience them. Then the analogy I've always used is that no one learned to swim from a book. So the same thing's true in this space. So there'll be a lot of what we do will be really getting our marketers' hands and eyes and brains into the machine and really, really being active. So there's quite a lot, so I do need to refer to some of this. We're going to do a lot of capability building. We've got a huge Uplay program already in place, which is using gaming masterclasses to try and draw from all parts of this really quite complicated and unregulated ecosystem some views that will help our marketers form their own opinions. Because I think having that level of education is super important. Without it, people tend to get attracted just by the brightest, shiniest object in the room, which is often esports, but it's not the only game in town, right? And it's not necessarily the right place for all the brands. And we really want to drive a conversation about what makes great assets as well in this space, because again, one of my biggest crimes in work was probably this thing called Easy Digital, which we invented in China, which was basically cutting and pasting TV commercials and putting them on video. Now, we know radio commercials don't work on TV, TV ads don't really work on mobile, and why would the same not hold true for gaming? So assets are going to be super important. And we're also looking at esports enthusiasts in a number of ways. Are they a target audience in their own right? Are they a sub-segment for some of our brands? Or are they our next generation of influencers? So conversations happening around that. There's also a lot of brainstorms with brands to find who could be the right partner for them, because it's very difficult to draw a simple map of this metaverse, right? So it's going to come through some trial, error, brainstorming. And one of the hooks that we're hanging that on, because we're such a purpose-driven organization, and because we think this has got a great chance to communicate really deeply, is can that partner really help bring our brand purpose to life and bring something to it? So this conversation is going all the way from how do we build better assets, all the way through to should we even be building our own games and have branded games. And then the final leg of this, Jasper, is to work with the industry stakeholders and to do the things that the MMA and the WFA do so well. So with the Mobile Marketing Association, we might even have some of the authors in the room, certainly on the conference, but we put together a really good piece around the metaverse, and there's more to come on gaming from them to really start to guide how marketers use it. And there's some WFA initiatives coming up as well. And part of that will be the heavy lifting, making sure we've got the usual standards that we expect from any new channel in terms of viewability, brand safety. I think for gaming, especially age gating will be important, and also making sure that we don't do anything as brands to ruin a great consumer experience, and that we actually bring something to that rather than just interrupting it. Yeah.
I mean, it is fascinating. I'm going off script a little bit, but it is fascinating that one of the world's biggest brands, or collection of brands, you're not dictating the rules. You are genuinely here to learn, right? I mean,
yeah.
for transparency, we organised the Uplay event, 2 Uplay events for you so far. And it's fascinating going out to the gaming industry saying, Unilever would like to learn. I mean, it doesn't happen in the music business, it doesn't happen in the sports business. And absolutely fascinating. And so you're here to meet people. You're here to learn about the industry, right?
Yeah, and I think in this space especially, brands have got to be a little bit humble, because it's such authenticity and not being too interruptive are so important, because this audience, I believe at least, is going to be the least tolerant of the old school of interruption. And I do think the table stakes have changed now with data-driven marketing, because back in the day with just pure play TV, really the value exchange, all we were asking for was a minute of your time. Like, can you keep one eye on the TV screen while we play you an ad? But now we're often asking for people to pause on a very immersive experience or to give us some personal data. These are much higher stakes, and so we've got to be a little bit more sensitive, I think.
So back on Uplay, are you able to share any of the successes from Uplay? Any of the learnings from Uplay?
Yeah, I'll share a couple, but as I said, the big stuff's in the works at the moment. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard this many times, but I'm contractually bound to repeat it. And I think it's relevant to this. That Unilever has this compass that is all about purpose, because we believe that people with purpose thrive, companies with purpose last, and brands with purpose grow. And we mean that. That's not just a belief system. We're now seeing it in our most purposeful brands are showing real commercial success. So we know purpose pays, and we know there are challenges in the current media world with communicating that really well. So we're always looking for new ways to do that, and I do believe gaming is going to be one of them. And some of you may have seen this before, but the one that really stands out to me because it's so pure in talking about purpose is the Hellmann's mayonnaise work that started in Canada and has rolled out to a couple of other markets, where they went to Animal Crossing and they built an island. They built a virtual island in the game, which players could register to get access to it via Twitter. And I don't know if you play the game much, but in that version at least, you came into possession of a lot of agricultural products, and in this case turnips. And the turnips go off if you don't use them. And so we asked people to bring their turnips to Hellmann's Island before they rotted. And in return for every turnip that they gave us in the virtual world, we fed a needy person in the real world. And those of you from the Northern Hemisphere will know that suddenly around Christmas time, it gets really cold. There's this sudden, people's hearts melt and they're suddenly talking about goodwill to others. And one of the big parts of that is volunteer work and charitable work to feed the homeless and the needy. And so this absolutely played into our brand values, which I should explain to you. I mean, if you see Hellmann's work, it's all about being able to open the fridge and take out random ingredients plus Hellmann's and make beautiful food out of it, because all food is too good to be wasted. So here we were, living our purpose, living with the brand's strategy, and doing some real good inside the game in a very integrated, seamless way. So when I was asking around, shopping around in the business for great cases, people showed me this about 3 times before I just paused and realized just how good it was. But that connection, if we can do that, and if there are gaming partners out there who understand our brand purposes and can connect to that degree, I'm really interested in hearing about that, if it's at scale. So that's one. The other one, a bit more classic, Clear men's anti-dandruff shampoo. I mean, it alternates with a certain other well-known brand of shampoo for being the world's #1 for men, but I think it currently is. And we did a great collaboration in China. What we did was we built on a lot of learning that we'd had from our NBA Basketball Association, but we took it into esports. So we worked with Honor of Kings. I'm told at the time it was the #1 mobile esports game on the planet. I don't know if it still holds that title, but it was scaled. And we did probably the kind of things you've seen in other cases. So live streaming with our influencers, all the usual e-com assets, driving people to JD.com, etc. But in the middle of that, we had what were called dragon sets, which were branded collectible packs, totally in keeping with the game and with the Clear brand. And the thing just went crazy, particularly online. We had this massive sales spike, and those collectibles sold out in the 3 biggest provinces in China in 24 hours. And it was just, I thought it was a great transference of our it's a brand essence, which is all about performance, because it does what it says on the tin. And that's why we sponsor people like Ronaldo. So it's all about high performance, and we successfully transferred that into the gaming world. So, and I hope in a year's time that we can talk to you about 10 or 12 cases like that on big global brands, and we've got some really exciting pipeline. Yeah.
Do we have any questions for David? Come on. How many chances you got to ask David Porter questions? Actually, loads, because he's very accessible usually. But okay, so you're not allowed to talk too much about what's coming up in terms of Unilever, which is fair enough.
Yeah,
completely fair enough. But from what you've learned in the last 12 months since the first Uplay, 24 months since the first Uplay. I think you did the first one during Gaming Matters in 2019, 2 years ago, right? How, from what you've learned, what advice could you give to other brands, other advertisers who wanted to get started in gaming?
Yeah, good question, Jasper. I think the first thing is what I said at the beginning about not learning to swim from a book. You have to just do something. And if brands are going to wait for a nice, tidy playbook with the gaming industry neatly arranged in, with a natural order of progression about how you work through it, that's going to be a long, long time that you're going to wait. I'm pretty sure of that. And so that cheesy thing about being able to fail fast, I think in this case is definitely important. I think there's a very quick and easy access point, which is just to go to your DSP and buy ad inventory on the games and on the gaming platforms. But with the watch out that when I was talking about my quick digital crime in China, it's very easy to get that wrong with the wrong assets. So I think it still needs attention. And I think at the same time, just be careful about brand safety, because the bad actors love new platforms. That's a well-known fact. I think after that, then it's probably about in-game branding and how looking for opportunities to do more of that and to find ways that you can leverage that outside through gaming league sponsorships or through on-pack activations like the one I just described. The challenge there is to find the right game. And again, there's no one that can tell you what the answer to that one is. You've got to go hunting, basically, I think. And being honest, I think it does favor a larger organization like ours who can talk to the industry about 30 or 40 brands in most markets. So we got a better chance of finding a good fit if we're speed dating the 20 or 30 organizations. And then I think at the end of that, you've got perhaps the debate over whether you build your own games or not. Do we go out and build branded games? And this is an absolute parallel of the conversation we were having 10 or 15 years ago about content. What was it? We talked about, do you build, borrow, or buy in content? And I think exactly the same is true here. Someone will really make it work and win big, a bit like the Lego movie worked brilliantly in the content world. Hats off to PhD and Lego for doing that. We've yet to see a brand transfer into this space as well. And I remember having EA as a client back in London eons ago, and we used to go to a lot of the early tests of the games, so beta tests, and there were some big franchises there, movie franchises, sports franchises, trying to offer up games that were really quite shockingly bad. So I think I saw way back then, it's very easy to make a misstep, but I would love to see one of our brands really nail that.
I mean, it's a tough crowd. I mean, I don't think you saw it yesterday, but Pratik from Coke was talking about the new movie they made, or the new ad they made, and they've copped quite a lot of flack from the game industry. And he stood up and he said, "We're learning, and we're not going to change what we've done, but we're going to engage with the audience and find out what we should be doing." And he had a wonderful insight, which was, "Don't hate the haters."
Spot on. I mean, if you think about all the big gaming franchises now, and I play some of them, my son plays some of them, and the anger and the upset when a new release comes out and the engine isn't quite like the old one. And then there's the other half of the world who go equally crazy at you if the engine is the same as the old one. So I totally agree with Pratik. We have to go with that flow a bit. And
then, so we talked a little bit about how your advice on advertisers getting into gaming. So you're saying it's more partnership driven than tactical is probably the right way?
Yeah, I think so. And finding a way, if we get that right partner who shares or can add weight to our purpose, that's terrific. Because I think in gaming, back to that Hellman's example, where we're doing something in the virtual world that has consequences in the real world, we've learned if you're going to really do purpose, that it's about brand say in terms of what you believe in that attracts people, but you've got to deliver on the brand do as well and make a material difference and actually own it. And I think gaming gives us a different opportunity to connect like that. So the partnerships are vital, yeah.
And I think you would probably see a significant sales spike if one of the Unilever logos were up there. Probably, you heard it here first, a live pitch to David Porter for Unilever to sponsor Gaming Matters next year. Okay, so finally, in the whole brand conversation, is there any other advice that you can give?
Yeah, and I wrote down some great advice, but I got it entirely the wrong order. So I actually want to take it off here. I think the first one is look for a brand safe environment. We can't forget that the basics of brand safety. And I think it's doubly important when we're dealing with a young and volatile audience. It's super important for all sorts of reasons. And to look for really good age gating norms within that. The norms vary tremendously around the world. So the country of origin of the game or the platform could mean that it really is in quite a different place to where our compliance guys would like it to be. So we have to check up on that. I think this bit about the assets is important as well. And I've learned this time and time again now in the wider digital world is we've got to be as native as we possibly can. And often it's only when the supply side gets large and sophisticated enough to be able to offer us great advice and resources that we nail that. So I think in most of the big digital platforms now, there's great creative partnership from people who really understand their users. And it would be great to build that kind of relationship with people on the other side of this equation as well. I think we've got to avoid intrusive experiences. I worry every day that somebody is going to bring into gaming the modern day equivalent of the internet pop-up banner. And it's just going to ruin this for everybody because it's going to make the gamers very, very adverse to seeing commercial messages in the games. So we've really got to avoid that. And then finally, to stay on purpose, to be as authentic as we can, and to try and connect back into the real world for that.
Some amazing insights there. So I'm going to ask you one more question. The look on your face. Talking about gaming, talking about Unilever, lots of insights here, and I've written loads of notes, so I'm going to summarize in a minute. But out of all of it that's going on with gaming and Unilever right now, if you were to say one thing was the most exciting thing right now that you're allowed to say, what's the most exciting thing in the game, or even not for Unilever, for brands, for advertisers, for anyone wanting to get in gaming, what is the most exciting thing for you right now?
Well, that's a toss-up. I think something I'm actually quite excited about, and I'm not sure if we've announced it, but here we go, is that what we want our marketers to do is to get involved by setting up an internal gaming league. So we actually want Unilever internally to be doing esports. Because again, the experience that brings, I think, will be very exciting. So, and no one's exempt. And I often find when we do things like this, actually, our most senior people are the ones who lean in the hardest. And that's great because it sets a brilliant example. So yeah, that's a very fun area. I think the other exciting thing is how the metaverse more broadly is coming together, and I think things like e-education have affected that. So I feel there's going to be a huge convergence point fairly soon, given that we're emerging into a slightly different kind of new normal from the one we expected. I think those kids are going to grow up like their Chinese counterparts with this much more intimate relationship with the screen. And I think gamification of the rest of the metaverse will probably be the big thing.
Well, fantastic. Well, David, I could talk to you forever, but I know you've got quite a big job to do. So just to summarise. Oh, hang on. We got a question from the outside world, which is from Has Armenian. Now, Has is very involved in extreme sports. So, what percentage of youth-focused media is spent on gaming as opposed to other sports?
Honestly, right now it's quite a small spend, but I think you'll see that transform because I think now there's the opportunity to move what would have been maybe a big content project into becoming a big gaming project. So the rocks get bigger as you make that transition. And I wouldn't just say it's all about youth either, by the way. I bet there's an awful lot of gamers in the room today or online who wouldn't consider themselves as youth. So I think we're looking at this, especially when you get into casual gamers, as being a very broad appeal thing.
A question from the floor.
Thank you. Hello. Hi. I would like to ask a little bit more regarding what you said about when you did for Healthman, you inculcated some values into, for example, the turnips, and actually went offline to donate to charity, as well as the other part about the food. Can you elaborate more on that? So how, as a community, to bridge the online and the offline communities who actually need help but have very little access, obviously, onto whatever gaming platform and technologies there are, but how can we help to bridge that as well? So in terms of not just like simple CSR, but really to be able to engage and add value to various communities, and also that in ways that are sustainable. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is answering you directly, but Unilever doesn't do CSR. We don't do charity. We do purpose. And the idea is that if we have a purpose that works for the brand, it sells product as well. Hence the idea that brands with purpose grow. So what we don't do is just do something after the event to make ourselves feel good. It has to be integral to the brand. So for instance, with Hellmann's, it's this idea that all food is too good to be wasted. Yeah, so we lived that in the game virtually, and we lived it in the real world through the donations. And these are the kind of things that brand does all the time. Which is why it's the right brand to be involved in that game, and it's the right brand to be involved in that action in the real world. So that brand do part of it is super important to us. There was I think another question in there around accessibility and how can we bring communities together, and that's something that really interests me because it's very clear that a game console gives people a different level of accessibility, and it really levels the playing field. So it can level out things like physical disabilities in a dramatic way. And I'm not sure we've quite got there yet, although that is a space that some of our brands are very, very engaged in already. So for instance, Rexona, our Dio's brand, has, and I don't have all the full details with me here, but we've done a lot of work in the US to redesign packaging so that it becomes accessible to all, which is quite a feat actually, and it's worth checking that out online. That's quite a new thing we've done. So I can see opportunities to develop that accessibility area as well.
Time for one more question. Can't actually see anything with these lights in your eyes. So, okay, David, thank you. I've never said this in 30 years of producing events, but we're finishing on time. But thank you so much. So I've just written some notes. For the first time ever, just so I can say turnips matter. But you talked about the metaverse. You talked about learning to swim. You talked about the importance of partnerships. You talked about being humble, and that came. Everything you're talking about is about. You're one of the world's biggest brands, and you're saying, "I'm here to learn." I mean, that's actually something that's come through with you and the Coke presentation and MasterCard as well. It's all kind of. We're not going to dictate. I think it's a different conversation. We're talking to you about sport and music and the other things. You talk about being authentic. You talk about purpose. You talk about safety matters, being native. Don't be intrusive. But I think the most important thing that came out of this was do something.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, David Porter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Simon.
We're both going to get thrown out of Singapore for shaking hands now. You know that. So look, that's it. Thank you so much to everyone here in the room. Thank you to everyone online who joined us the last 2 days. We hope, just like me, we've all been learning and really listening to some fascinating insights and some huge numbers. Now, remember, this was an intersection of the music, sports, and marketing industries, bringing them together with the game industries to learn from each other. So hopefully that's worked. We're not trying to tell everyone, this isn't a gaming developers conference. This is about bringing all of you together. I'd love to get your feedback, please. Did it work? Did it matter? Did it make sense? Obviously, I also want to know about whether getting tested for half an hour was easy or not. So any feedback you can give me, please. You're going to get an email from me saying thank you. Please tell me about your experience. But also then finally, really just to thank, some more thank yous. I want to thank all of our sponsors, Twitch, Audio Network, Riot, Singtel, and Sportfive, for absolutely making this possible. Without them, we wouldn't be here. Unearthed Productions, unbelievable, faultless, no problems, brilliant. And so nice to have people handing you microphones. And like I said, not my two cats kind of crawling across the screen as I'm talking. So brilliant. Thank you so much for everything there. To Bud for all your PR, NME and the World Federation of Advertisers, and then of course the Singapore Tourism Board, family, partners, amazing team going above and beyond everything they do to help us bring us all together in this wonderful, wonderful bubble. I'm going to try and say this without bursting into tears, but branded team, I said this yesterday, I say it again, you are all fucking amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. They have worked so hard for 2 years from our bedrooms, from all over the world, but we haven't been able to get together. We don't have an office. We're doing this from our houses. It's so good to see everyone together today in Singapore, and also the teams in Hong Kong and at home helping out as well. So thank you and well done, Branded. And then finally, Branded is now officially a family business because my daughter and her friends have all been helping out. So please could everyone give the biggest round of applause to the minions, the teens who have been helping us all out and who hopefully will sleep well tonight. So all of you, thank you so much for joining. We can all have lunch next door. We can all talk to each other. We can eat, we can meet and all that kind of stuff. So thank you. Enjoy.